We were very, very lucky being in the first round of Y Combinator, because that alone generated a lot of interest. A lot of readers of Paul Graham were just excited to see what was going to come up. And we were the first ones to launch. And with that, we got a fair amount of attention just being the first YC startup. But most importantly, we got a lot of attention from Paul's readers. He would write about us in his blog, he would mention us during talks, and he would say very nice things that were totally true. He really did spend a lot of time on Reddit back then. And so having that kind of endorsement and having Paul Graham's readership coming to your site and contributing to it and building the foundation of the community was a just really invaluable way to start Reddit. Otherwise, you're really just sort of stuck on whoever you can browbeat into using your site. And we begged plenty of our friends and family to use it, and a few did. Morgan, Connor, you both rock. And they were regular users. I had to give them their shout out. But for the most part, a lot of those early users were actually Steve and me with aliases. We had silly usernames that we just generated in order to make it look like there was a diversity of users on the site. I don't feel too bad about this because we didn't have commenting back then, so it wasn't like I was responding to my own comments saying, "Brilliant comment, Alexis." But we knew that for a new user, for let's say one of these Paul Graham readers who saw the Reddit shout in his essay, for them to come to Reddit and not find anything new and interesting, for them to find a list full of links all submitted by spez or all submitted by nothing, was going to be a fairly disheartening experience. And so we needed to use a little bit of, I hate to say it, but I mean deception, frankly, to show that there was more activity on the site than there actually was. Fortunately, though, about a month or so into Reddit, we both had this moment where we spent the whole day using Reddit just like anyone else. We would vote on stories, and that was it. We didn't submit anything. And at the end of that day, we looked at each other and realized, holy shit, this might actually work. Maybe we haven't been wasting our time. This site is actually alive. And that was a really, really crucial moment for us. It was before we took any angel funding. We were still, in fact, for the entire duration of our startup, we were pretty much living on pizza. But we were still at a very nascent stage in Reddit. And that was the first bit of validation we had gotten, and it felt great. And it kind of just kept growing from there. Okay, there was this whole other area of personal stuff going on that I won't even touch on. The business, the startup side of things were harrowing. And I mean, I don't want to over-dramatize this. I know there's a popular Facebook movie coming out that over-dramatizes startup life, so I don't need to add to that. But Steve literally did sleep with his laptop for a number of months, mostly because the site was still written in Lisp back then, and it was less than ideal, at least in certain circumstances. And so there was no shortage of stuff that was going wrong at any given moment, not just on the technical side. I mean, things just break all the time and things just happen, and startup life is adapting to it and dealing with it. But on the sort of non-technical side of things, every opportunity, remember this is pre-Twitter, so I've just dated myself, but every opportunity to see someone talking about Reddit, whether it was on a blog, I still remember the first blog that ever wrote about us. I think it was called The Changing Way. It was some dude's WordPress blog. And I still remember the look of it because he had a photo of those really distinctive orange flags that they put up all over Central Park a few years back. Anyway, he was the first person to ever write about Reddit. And both Steve and I commented on that site and said, thank you, thank you, thank you. Please keep the feedback coming. And that was great. It was like, for once, someone other than us and our moms cared about our website. Well, yes and no. The weird thing about Reddit is that for a community its size, now I'm no longer at Reddit, but the public traffic numbers that they put out are, I think, put the site at about 8 million unique visitors a month or every 30 days, which is a fairly big site. What's a real mind job is I think most of our users don't realize that, or they think the site feels a lot smaller, because it is, for a site that big, I would be willing to put them up against any other community on the internet for being one of the most tight-knit or most strongest communities, especially for one of that scale. And so the site has never really, it's certainly grown and it's matured, and it feels very different than it did when we started it 5 years ago. But in a lot of ways, it still feels small. And from our side of things, we're sort of the janitors of Reddit. We keep the site running, we keep everyone having a good time, we keep the bathrooms clean for the most part, and try to make the site an enjoyable experience. But we've always stayed a remarkably small team. Even now, I guess if you include contractors, there's 6 or 7 people working on Reddit. But when we got acquired, there were basically 3. And then in the years since, we've added 3 more developer hires, at least full-time, and a community manager. But the site is still remarkably small. And the ratio of developers to users, I think, is one of the best. Craigslist probably still beats it. but is still one of the best on the web. So it still feels very small. We never developed enough of a corporate hierarchy for it to feel like a real company. It's always been a group of us working in a often stuffy, but once we got to Condé Nast, slightly nicer and larger and prettier office, but all working together. Obviously, I'm thankful we got out of that apartment in Somerville where there were 4 of us crammed on a sloped floor, so that we had to actually tape the wheels of a rolling computer chair so we wouldn't be sliding into each other. But it's come a long way, and yet still the site feels very small. I'm still friends with everyone who's there, and it's still an incredible thought to see just how much it has grown. Back in the day, I would say they reflected. They were similar to like geeks like me and Steve. I mean, frankly, like I said, we were submitting most of the content early on, and we are readers of Paul Graham, and so I can open that more broadly and be a little bit less narcissistic and say, it was those early users of Reddit were like Paul Graham fans, so people interested in technology, people interested, the early adopters in trying out new things, and also people who were just interested in having a fairly broad worldview and understanding and knowing what was going on. And being on top of that and being the tastemaker for all their friends. Since I feel like it's expanded a bit, but Reddit still remains fairly, geeky is not the right word, but the sort of people who use Reddit, I think, are also the sort of people who others go to for their recommendations, whether it's what movie they should see or what computer they should buy or what distro Linux they should be installing. It has always remained, I feel there's something about the site that draws the kind of person who is, even if they're not submitting, the majority of the users just visit the site to find out what's new and interesting, but it draws the kind of person who is genuinely curious about being in the know and wants to, if not share it, whether it's through email or IM or however they want to do on their Facebook wall, to at least be a part of some experience that is happening that is a little bit bigger than what's going on in each of our own little individual worlds. I do wish the site had a better ratio of men to women. It's still a fairly male, and this is based on survey data, but it's still a fairly male-heavy site. I'm always thrilled whenever I meet female Redditors, I've seen very anecdotally from meetups since we started doing them, basically inviting Redditors out for free drinks, that the ratio's actually gotten much, much better, and that's always a nice thing. But for the most part, it's still, a fairly geeky audience. I guess there's 8 million geeks who want to visit the site every month, which is encouraging. We need to breed more people. We don't know ethnic breakdown. So the demographic data that I have is from campaigns that we ran, mostly for the benefit of advertisers, but that we also, I'm pretty sure we shared these publicly. There's no reason why we wouldn't have. And so we had a significant sample size, so I feel pretty good about this sort of data. Most Redditors are at least college educated. A number of them have graduate degrees. A number of them are in the IT tech world. I guess that's the bubble they chose to fill in on the form. I'm trying to think of other interesting stuff. Fairly US based, but actually, I believe it's 60-40. 60% US, 40% abroad, which is exciting. Mostly in English-speaking countries, UK, Canada, Australia. But seeing 40% representation is great because I don't know, when I've got my soapbox out and when I'm thinking, most idealistically about Reddit, I like to think that it could be a truly global community. Obviously, there are lots of people who just don't have access to the internet in a way that is much more prevalent in the developed world. But just having a more global perspective, I think, is exciting and it benefits the whole community.